As I have said plenty of times before, if you want to know why you are under spiritual warfare or spiritual attack, the main thing that you really need to do is discover what your spiritual gifts are. When we are under spiritual warfare, it has a lot to do with the spiritual gifts and the spiritual power that we carry. This is why so many people are dealing with energy siphoning magic, with destiny swapping magic. I've been getting into the topic of auric codes on this channel, where I talked about how our spiritual gifts and our destiny form codes and geometric patterns in our aura. So when someone is pulling on your energy in terms of energy harvesting and destiny swapping, it's the code. The code that holds your spiritual gifts and your destiny that they are trying to suck and harvest from you. Hello, beautiful people. It is Oshun Kimmy, your sage, your guru, your mystic, and your spiritual informant. And today we're going to get into this topic of spiritual gifts. I am going to do a whole separate video on how to actually activate these gifts, but this video is just to talk about what those gifts are. So many of us are already familiar with the clairs, clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance. Essentially, when you have one of the clairs, then you have the ability to either see, feel, hear, smell, or detect spiritual activity. But the spiritual gifts that I am going to be spilling the spiritual tea on today are ancient gifts that have been hidden and offline for centuries and generations. So let's dive deep into the mystery behind the ancient magic that you may be carrying in your auric code, in your DNA, in your energetic imprint. We have been experiencing an uptick of spiritual activity and spiritual enlightenment since 2020. So many people who I have read and many people who have been on this channel can identify that their spiritual warfare really amped up around 2020 and 2021. And this is not a coincidence. This is because there was a major planetary conjunction on December 21st, 2020. That initiated a major timeline shift where some people moved into 4D reality while other people remained in 3D reality. Many of these people who have been noticing that they have been experiencing spiritual warfare since 2020 and 2021 are actually experiencing this because of the activations of your spiritual gifts. To be honest, essentially, we are all going through spiritual warfare. It's just about our awareness and our perception of this warfare. And so people who moved up to 4-dimensional reality became aware of the spiritual opposition that have been fighting them essentially their whole life. So one of the gifts that came online is related to divination. There is an uptick of people who actually have the ability to read spirit. And working with tarot cards is not the only way to read spirit. And so if you hear this and you think, well, I cannot read tarot, that does not mean that you don't have an ability to divine, because actually we can read spirit in a variety of ways. There are people who could be considered elemental whisperers. So these are people who can receive messages from the 4 elements, from the wind, from fire, from water, from earth. Of course, there are also other things you can read, like tea leaves, like dice, like playing cards. And so if you suspect that you have a divining ability, see what your mode of divination is. Another ancient spiritual gift that you can have is an ability to vision quest. And vision questing looks like being able to go into meditation and tap into different parts of your body, your heart, your gut, your solar plexus, your third eye. And as you travel through those places inside of you, you can actually see where blockages lie. You can see where spiritual parasites or spiritual ticks are. You will be able to see various energies and entities that have manifested inside of your being, and you will be able to clear them. So if you have the ability to vision quest, you can actually vision quest into yourself. You can vision quest into natural elements. You can vision quest into numbers, to where if you have been seeing a lot of angel numbers, actually each angel number is going to mean differently for each person. So people think that seeing 444 means the same thing for everybody, but that's not true. If you have been receiving or seeing a certain numerical pattern pattern over and over, it may actually help you to meditate on that pattern. You can draw out the number or look up a picture of the number and actually go into meditation to travel or vision quest through that number to see what the messages are for you. And I know this sounds very trippy because it is. Another very ancient gift that you can have is the ability to read codes or patterns in energy. So there are people who can see auras. So if you have the ability to see the colors of auras, you may want to go deeper into this ability and see if you are able to see patterns or numbers or codes of any sort. Because if you can, then you will be able to read your own auric code, decode what your own destiny is. You'll also be able to look into your past lives. And you will also be able to see and read the literal code of any spell work that is being sent against you. And this is especially the case if you are dealing with sorcerers who use a lot of sigils. You will be able to read those very sigils and clear that energetic imprint off of your aura. And so all of the gifts that we have actually give us the ability to fight the spell work that is being sent to us. And so none of this spiritual warfare is random or for no reason. It's meant to teach you the power that you actually hold. Even though all of these gifts really are interconnected, but there are two gifts that correlate very heavily with this ability to read auric codes, and that is the ability to read Akashic records. So the Akashic record is essentially a library, a spiritual library or spiritual archive of all the things you have done, all the lives you have lived, and all the places that you have been. Earthly places and non-earthly places. When you look into your Akashic records, you will be able to see as well the starseed galaxies and planets that you come from, if you are indeed a starseed. And the second gift related to being able to read auric codes is kind of a deeper mode of this ability. And this is what I would call a weaver or a netter. And this is someone who can not only read codes, but rewire them. Because our codes kind of create a pattern. And so if you notice a sort of implant in your energetic pattern or some type of disruption in that pattern, you will be able to clear out the disruption and reweave the pattern according to its original function or even according to the new function you want to give it. So let's say you've been operating on an old code, an old programming that you want to get rid of. You actually will be able to go into your own code and just rewire it. And so it's kind of like working with spiritual algorithms. I know that it sounds so trippy, but it's real. And there are people out here who have the ability to do it. And so one of the last spiritual gifts or spiritual superpower that I am going to discuss is what my grandmother called being a true dreamer. And if you are a true dreamer, then you essentially have the ability to travel in the dream world and receive messages and information. And the more that you master this ability of dreaming, if something is happening that you do not want to happen, you will be able to do that in the dream state. So one way to begin practicing this gift of being able to true dream is by giving your spirit a task or a mission before you go to sleep. Direct your spirit. Give your spirit a question to bring you an answer to. What I usually say, show me what it is I most need to know. It is 100% possible to have spiritual gifts that you are completely unaware of. And so if none of these gifts sounded familiar to you, it may simply mean that you are not aware. And so if you need to know your spiritual gifts, this is where meditation comes into play. This is where fasting comes into play. This is where prayer comes into play. And of course, this is where a reading may be useful or helpful for you as well. Because I did not know my spiritual gifts until a reader told me that I had spiritual gifts. And once she told me, I of course had to begin doing the inner work that I needed to do to spiritually evolve. So finding out what the gifts are is step one. Activating them is a whole nother step. And so I will be talking in a separate video about how to actually activate your spiritual gifts. And so I hope this video was helpful. If you need a reading of your auric code, where you want to know what your spiritual gifts are, how to activate them, I would highly suggest you booking a Destiny and Spiritual Gifts reading, which will be available in the Etsy link that I'm going to pin in the comments below. And if you want to join us on Patreon to really begin to activate your magic and hone your spiritual gifts in a community of other people who are doing the very same thing, then there will be a link for the Patreon as well in the comments. May peace and blessings be forever upon you. Selah.